Hello and welcome back to XVD Bibles. My name is Ethan. So today we're going to be doing part 4 of my series on how to rebind a Bible from start to finish. So today we're going to actually start working on, we're going to be rounding the corners and using a certain radius to get a nice radius here on the cover leather. I'm going to be marking a center line on my cover, and then I'm actually going to start skiving, which if you've done this before, if you're just, doing your research or whatever, skiving is probably one of the highest, probably one of the riskiest parts of rebinding a Bible. One where you can, if you're not careful, you can really mess up your piece of leather permanently where you need to start over. So hopefully I'll be able to do that without, making any big mistakes. I'm not at the point where, I'm definitely not at the point where I still make mistakes for, when I skive, obviously. So I'm not, an expert by any means at skiving. Although I would say I'm pretty good at skiving. So I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to do that. The one thing that I'm not going to go into detail here is how to sharpen your skive knife. I actually have already covered that in detail in a previous video. So, if I need to take a minute to sharpen my knife, I'm going to do that away from camera. And you can reference that other video if you need help on how to sharpen your knife. So let's go ahead and get started here and start out with our center line. So the way I do my center lines is I use essentially a piece of paper as a measuring tape. And I use little scraps of paper as measuring tapes in a lot of different applications because I've mentioned this in a previous video. One of the reasons is because I do a lot of my Bibles, I rebind a lot of my Bibles like late at night once my wife and kids are in bed. So I don't want the possible likelihood of error in forgetting a number or, doing my math wrong. If I'm trying to get my center line, I obviously need to measure the width of the area and then divide it by 2. I don't want to be messing with those numbers if I can avoid it. And I do that with, little measuring papers here. So this is just craft paper, nothing, nothing fancy. So I'll go ahead and make my center line here. There we go. So you saw how I did that there. I just took a scrap of paper, marked it here, folded it in half to get the center, marked it on the cover, etc. So I also use that same technique for spacing out my hubs, which I'll explain probably in the next part. But let's go ahead and do our radius here. So where are my? Okay, here we go. So if you're starting out and you are trying to figure out this process, figuring out what type the size of your radius is definitely a challenging part of this process. And I got a set of like these leather circle punches a while back, and it comes with a bunch of different sizes. And I just have I've taken out the majority of them and just have in here the two radiuses that I like using. So I can measure these for you, and you can. Some people use like sockets, like sockets for like a socket wrench or like a pneumatic, socket wrench. So the idea here is that your inside radius is going to be the radius you use to trim your cover, and the bigger radius is going to be the radius you use to cut your liner leather, or your cover leather. And essentially the way these need to work together is that whatever your fold over is, so if you see this here, whatever your fold over is, so whatever measurement of leather you want of your cover to fold over your liner, that measurement needs to be, roughly the same as like this distance right here. So if you're doing a 3/8 fold over, that's pretty easy to figure out. You could trace it on a piece of paper. So the way you want to do this is like find an inside radius, find the smaller radius that you want. Look at some production Bibles and say like, okay, what does Schuyler use for their corners? What does my True Tone ESV? What radius does that cover have on its corner? And choose something bigger or smaller according to your preference. And then you need to, trace that radius, on a paper, let's say, and then, measure out, 3/8 if you're using 3/8 or 5/16, which is what I do. And then you need to find like your bigger radius. So I can measure exactly what I use. So I always do a 5/16 radius on my Bibles without fail. I do a variety of different. I sometimes use a smaller radius if I'm doing a smaller Bible, or if I'm doing a Bible with like a really small yap. You generally want to use a little bit smaller of a radius if your cover is going to be like hugging your text block tighter around, the edge. You're going to want to use a smaller radius. But if you're doing like standard yap Bibles that are, that have either 5/16 of yap or, 3/8 inch of yap, that type of thing, you can go with a slightly bigger radius. So I can measure exactly what these two are. So this one is, actually, I think these are in metric. So for the small radius, this is 25 millimeters. And for the big radius, we're looking at 45 millimeters. So if you want to get exactly the same set that I have those in my link tree. I have a Google document where I have all of my materials that I use. And I think this exact set is in there. So yeah. So we'll be using this big radius here to cut our cover leather. So when you go to do this, the proper technique that I've seen other better rebinders than me do is that you don't want to just curve your knife around. You want to take like very gradual swipes at it, and that's how you get like a really nice curve. So. There we go. So here on this Horween, we got some nicely rounded corners. Actually, that one needs to be touched up. Just kidding. There we go. Nicely rounded corners. 4 corners here. So let's go ahead and do our skiving. So I've already sharpened my knife, so I should be good for a little while. But let me go ahead and get my skiving surface out and change my camera angle. All right, so that should be a decent angle here. So if you know me, I really like doing a lot of things kind of budget oriented, and it's in the world of rebinding, like and in a lot of arts and crafts and trades, the tool doesn't make the tool doesn't make the craftsman. It's not the wand, it's the wizard, that type of thing. So there's a lot of ways to do rebinding and a lot of different trades very economically. Like you don't need, like if you're a potter, let's say, like you don't need $1,000 $1,000 pottery wheel. You can use a cheaper pottery wheel and get really good with that until you can kind of justify that higher price, that type of thing. So there are a number of things in the world of rebinding that I think you can go very economically on. Like I've talked before about, for stamping machines, you can go cheap with a stamping machine. Like you can you can find a very economical $200 stamping machine, and that can work really well for you. Like you don't need to go out and buy like a new, like a new Howard that costs $1,600. You don't need one of the other, more modern brands, that type of thing to be a good rebinder. So there are a few things though in the world of rebinding that I would recommend not going cheap on. And one of the things I would not recommend going cheap on is a good skiving knife. There are more expensive skiving knives out there, but this is the one I would recommend if you're learning. And this is not an expensive knife either, but it's a proper tool. So this skiving knife is by a company called George Barnsley. It's made in England. It is a 01 tool steel knife. And this one is obviously made for me as a left-hander. If you are a right-hander, your blade is going to be like the opposite way. This is a chisel ground single bevel skiving knife that is very, very high quality, and it costs like less than $40, but it's a very, very high quality tool. So I would not, if you're learning this out there, I would not recommend getting a skiving knife from Amazon. I wouldn't recommend getting like a skiving knife from like Tandy Leather or something like that. I would recommend going straight to like a George Barnsley skiving knife. They're excellent, and it is such a good tool, and professional rebinders use them. I mean, I think Jeremiah Payne from Frost Leather has been using a Barnsley skive knife since he started, I believe. And he still uses one to this day as an expert, as I would say a master at Bible rebinding. He still uses this knife specifically. So, and it's an inexpensive, very, very high quality tool. So I would recommend getting a George Barnsley knife over kind of one of those replaceable blade skiving knives that you'll see maybe if you search it on Amazon or something along those lines. I would not recommend those. You are going to be, those have a very much higher learning curve, I would say, than something like this. I've tried those before, and they are very, very hard to use. This is a proper tool. It's designed to be easy to use, and it's designed for experts, but it's also very economical. So that's my spiel on skive knives. Get a proper skive knife. That's what I would encourage you to do. So let's go ahead and get started in here. So when you go to skive your cover, you're going to need a flat polished surface. So this is a piece of quartz countertop that a guy from my church cut for me, and this is what I use to skive on. And the reason why you need to do that is you need a surface that you can like rub the tip of your knife against, where it doesn't dull your edge, and it doesn't bite in. So if I was using like one of my cutting mats, I could not skive on a cutting mat because the tip of my knife would always be getting stuck in that cutting mat material. You need something like granite, quartzite, And you can often get this stuff for free. Like if you go to like some place that does countertops, and you ask them, could I have a 1 foot by 1 foot scrap of, any type of countertop that you have, they might give it to you for free. But this I got from a guy from my church. He recently redid his kitchen and had a big piece of this leaning against the side of his house. And I asked him, and he said, yeah, come on over, we'll cut it. So he cut me a 1 foot by 2 foot piece for my skiving surface, and also a 1 foot by 2 foot piece as my my sharpening surface. So that kind of leads me into these knives too. If you go and purchase this knife, just know that you're going to have to work with it a little bit to get it appropriately sharp. Mine, I have put a lot of time into sharpening mine, maintaining mine. My edge is very high. I have a very high quality edge on mine. I have a perfectly flat edge on mine. I haven't messed it up to the point where like I have like a double bevel on it or something like that. So if you get this knife, just know that you're going to have to work with it a little bit, and you need to be careful with how you sharpen it. So these are designed to have a, sorry, I'm distracted. You need your skiving knife to have a single bevel. So you're not going to be sharpening this like you do a pocket knife or a kitchen knife or something along those lines. You need to only sharpen one side. And that geometry is what enables you to skive really well. So just be cautious with how you do it. If you get one and have trouble, please email me and I'll help you out. So, I had one guy who follows my channel. He reached out to me and I gave him some tips. I even like offered for him to send his knife to me and I would sharpen it and get it to a good workable sharpness. But I think he ended up figuring it out. So definitely just be careful with these. Definitely be careful with sharpening these. And the other thing about these is that you only want to use your skive knife for skiving. Don't use your skive knife for rounding your corners. Don't use your skive knife for cutting paper. Don't use your skive knife for like trimming your fingernails or anything like that. Just use your skive knife for skiving. Because if you only use your skive knife for skiving, you're going to be able to more easily maintain your edge if you're only using it to cut leather. If you're using it on harder materials, if you're using it against your cutting mat, all of those things are going to wear your edge faster, and you want an easily maintained edge for skiving. So anyway, let's get to it. So when I skive, I kind of skive close to the edge of my surface here. And I start with the corners. All the bookbinders I've seen start with their corners. And the way I do this is I do straight cuts. I'm not trying to curve anything. I'm doing like straight cuts. So if you can kind of see here, the way I would start this is by like doing a cut this way, turning the cover, doing a cut this way, turning my cover, doing a cut this way, turning my cover, and doing a cut this way, turning my cover. And then once I have that skived, I just do a cut this way to go along my edge a little bit. So you don't want to be like curving your knife or doing anything weird like that. You want to do nice straight cuts, because the straighter your cut, the easier it is to control. And you're going to want to stay away from skiving with the tip of your knife close to your cover. You want the tip of your knife to be overhanging your cover, because that's how you know if the tip of your knife is like just barely scraping against your stone and like just brushing your stone, you know that you're not going to be cutting through your cover. And you really want to, when you're doing corners like this, you really want to use like this section right here instead of this section up here. So, and honestly, doing this, the back edge of like when you're gripping your knife and skiving, you want to be very aware of where your tip is, like I said, and also where the heel of your knife is going. This kind of works as the rudder of your cutting stroke, your skiving stroke. And if you need to cut deeper, you push this you push the heel of your knife deeper like this. If you need to go more shallow, you pull it up like this. Obviously that's very exaggerated, but like this type of like control over the heel of your knife is how you kind of steer your stroke and go deeper and more, or deeper or more shallow depending. So let's go ahead and get started here. So this is kind of what I was talking about. Like you just want to kind of curve your cover, you know, around, and obviously I'm not being super aggressive with this. So pull this junk off. And you want to make sure that the surface underneath your cover is very clean, because if there's a little bit of leather under your cover, that could cause you to cut through your cover there. So so you can see here that I'm using just the heel of my knife to skive like way up here into the cover. And I like doing that because you don't want like jagged variations in depth when you're skiving. You want the skived section of your cover to be a very smooth transition down to the thinnest part near the corner. So hopefully that makes sense. So obviously going very slow. Skiving is it's not a sprint, I'm telling you. This is a little bit slower than what I do. Obviously be careful with stroking your knife like that if you're not familiar with your tools. So in terms of thickness, your corners need to be the thinnest, like really thin, I think. I would say like the goal for your corners are really like the thinness of a piece of paper, or like a thicker piece of paper. And I will say like the thinness of your edges really really depends on your leather. You want your edges to be really flexible, so that you can really easily fold your cover over your liner. So you can see here my technique. I am pushing against my knife with my pointer finger, so much so that I've developed like a little callus on my offhand pointer finger. Let's see how that feels pretty good. That's a good thickness, I think. Maybe I should go a little bit thinner. I do think I need a small touch-up sharpen. feels pretty good. Yeah, I think this first corner is done here, so let's go ahead and move on. It's almost done as well. Very careful about making sure scraps of leather are not under your cover. And when you do this, you really do need to press down onto your leather, onto your skiving surface. I am putting a good amount of pressure. If your knife is not, if you find that your knife is not cutting, it's probably a sharpening issue. I would say that's number one, most common, the issue people have. And number two, it's that you're not pushing down hard enough. So that feels, I would say, like 75% there. There we go. So all different types of leather skive differently. Horween skives okay. The issue I have with skiving Horween is that this underside is so slick. It's hard to, this leather is like slipping around on my skiving surface a lot, and it's difficult to keep it still. Because my knife like wants to pull the cover as I'm doing my strokes. So what you want to do to feel your thickness is like you want this right here to be like super flexible, and you want to be able to like pleat this really, really easily here. And you can see like that I'm able to pleat, really easily. So that's the end goal of doing your corners. So this leather is pre-thinned to 0.8 millimeters from the factory. So I only have to do like, I would say, a medium amount of skiving to get, good corners with this thickness of leather. But if you like a thicker cover and you're ordering your leather upwards of like 0.9, 1 millimeter, 1.1 millimeter, this process is going to be a lot more time consuming for you. And like I said before, all leathers skive differently. The leather that I like skiving the best is probably La Perla Azura Missouri or Minerva Box cowhide. Those leathers just, it's like you're cooperating with, they're really easy to skive. People say that like Badalassi Carlo Waxy is easy to skive. That's kind of the consensus around the Rebind world. I don't like Waxy as much for skiving. I think I have an issue with Waxy. I sharpen my knives so sharp that in Waxy, there's not enough resistance, and I make more mistakes with Waxy because I will just slip and I will just cut instead of having that like nice resistance to my knife. Because I don't only use 1500 grit sandpaper. I use like leather strops as well. So my knives are my knife is really, really sharp. So Minerva Box, like the pebbled version of Minerva, is a really great leather to skive. And so is Missouri. Couple leathers that are more difficult. I would say Horween Chrome XL is like medium difficulty. Difficult to skive would be like Horween Chrome XL Bison because it's so slippery. It's so slippery and it's soft, so it'll just stretch. Napa Goat Skin is pretty difficult because it's so soft. What else? Oh, Amazonia. This cowhide Amazonia from La Perla Azura was pretty difficult to skive. It's just so dense. And it's closer to like a supernatural feeling veg tan that it's just really difficult to skive. But this is a fully skived cover, and you can kind of see like the goal here. Like you want this to be really easy to bend, very flexible. In the corners, you want to be able to be like really easily pleated here like that. So. Do some sharpening. We are ready for the edges. So for this, you need to, because you're cutting away your lines, you need to remake your lines. Because you don't want to have to like remeasure anything. All right, so with your, I don't know if I'm going to show you like all 4 edges because it'll be kind of dry and boring. I'll probably just do one, show you how I process it, and do the others off camera. So the best way to do this is, like I said, you want to hang your point over the edge of your cover. And sometimes I just hover the tip over my granite block, but sometimes I just like very lightly, what is it called? Like index my knife against my skiving surface. And the way I do this is I do this in a bunch of, I usually do this in like three passes. So I'll do one pass where the heel of my knife is right against my where the liner falls. I'll do one pass that way, and then I'll back it up where my heel of my knife is more inside this line. I'll do one pass that way, and then I'll do like one more final pass along my edge to make sure like the actual edge is thin enough. because I want that gradual transition from full thickness to perfect thickness, perfect, paper thickness towards the edge. So that's how I do that. I do it gradually. So yeah. So I'm doing a second pass because I didn't get it thin enough on my first pass. So. All right, so now I'm doing my pass up here. So if you're having issues on the fold over step if you're having issues on your fold over step where you are folding your edges over your liner, if you're having issues with it, it's probably because you're not spending enough time skiving, and that you want to be always feeling how easy your cover is how flexible the edge of your cover is, and gauging how much more you need to skive. So this is almost done. This is almost done here. So I will do one more pass right near the edge. All right, that feels great. That is really well skived in my opinion. It's having trouble focusing. Maybe I'll go a little bit thinner. Oh yeah, that's a lot better. So look how easy that is to fold over, and it kind of even like stays folded over, which is great. So this is going to be a really easy Bible to do foldovers on. I actually need to do a little bit right here. So yeah, the more time you spend skiving, the easier your foldover process will be. So yeah, I do one pass with the heel of my knife right on my line. I do a higher up pass while making sure my tip is still holding over the edge. I do another pass like that, and then I normally will do one or two more passes like right near the edge. So yeah. So I'm going to finish this off camera because I'm just going to be doing the same exact thing on my other edges, and then we'll be back for, I think it's part 5. So next, for part 5, we're going to be doing our hubs, which is a cool process. And I've actually changed how I do hubs, so that'll be new information for everyone out there who's a subscriber of my channel. So thank you for watching. This is Ethan from Xfide Bibles.